called in Chapter 9. This is where we tell creditors how we're going to pay them, because pay them we must. How much remains to be seen. Traditionally in Chapter 11, which is very much the guide point from Chapter 9s are taken from, usually creditors are paid 70, 80, 90, 90% of what's owed to them, possibly over time, sometimes a lesser interest rate. What we're really in dispute over here are terms and conditions of labor agreements. So it's in everyone's best interest to try to work them out. The definition of a settlement is where you give up more than you want to, and you get less than you think you're entitled to. Well, that's probably what's going to have to take place in our labor agreements, and indeed with all of our creditors, because the bond people are waiting in line also. Eventually, when we submit that plan for the adjustment of a debt, if it gets approved, the court's position then is to administer it, to act as a supervisor, to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, what we say we're going to do. Wants to make sure we live up to our word. And if we don't, then the only power the court really has is to kick us out. So this is going to be a rough and possibly a long ride. I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful that we'll conclude this in 2 years or less. I would like to see it move as rapidly as possible. I think you saw some evidence of that in the judge setting the deadlines by the end of June, as he has done. A lot of it means stay tuned. Wait and see, read the webpage, find out what the documents that are filed in the court says. Now, more questions?
Yeah, let's start with a few questions, Robert. Now that you've outlined the basic framework for Chapter 9 and what the city is going to go through, how is this going to affect the average Vallejoan in the street? Are they going to feel any personal impact from this bankruptcy?
Well, I think we'll start to see some diminishment of services, but we've already seen so much over the years in the way our roads are not repaired, the fact that we can't get any police officer to come out when we have a property crime to report, the fact that the fire department is not doing the screening necessary to prevent fire prevention. We've already had a large cutback in what we have received from our employees. We've seen many non-safety related personnel leave. In the planning division, we've already had at least 3 people leave. We have a bare-bones skeleton staff. We have to hire more planners from an outside source now to have them paid for by the applicant in order to find out whether or not a project should go forward. So yes, you'll see diminishment of services, and eventually on the other side, the revenue side, I think you'll start to see attempts by the City Council to pass through higher fees. We may even see a tax measure, such as for transportation, that unlike being countywide, might be limited to the city streets of Vallejo only, which heaven knows we need. So I think you'll start seeing more expenses, more taxes possibly that have to be approved by the voters, and a cutback on the services, and probably a total reorganization, which is really what needs to be done, but that will take time.
What do you think are the biggest factors in our ending up where we are in this fiscal mess? A lot of people talk about the public safety contracts, other people talk about revenue. Do you think that the blame for this lies in one position or another, or is it sort of a combination of different factors?
I think it's a multiplicity of factions. You can't point to a single act. You rarely can unless there's a judgment or a catastrophic calamity such as an earthquake. Instead, we've been giving and giving and giving, and they've been demanding and demanding and demanding. There hasn't been the need or the attention given to the development of business activities. And possibly that's because we were too reliant upon Mare Island as a federal facility for too many years. We didn't develop a true entrepreneurial spirit where we attracted or wanted outside business. And of course, that type of thinking, that type of a value structure needs to be substantially changed. I think you're starting to see a change in that already. Certainly the adoption by the Planning Commission of the project with Touro University's Cancer Treatment Center is a big plus, and if that goes forward, as we all think it will, within the next 36 to 42 months to where they start conducting activities, you'll see a large change in the mentality of the town, of the people, and how it does business, and I think it will be a very great and positive change.
Now, what about the executory contracts that you referred to? When you say executory contracts, that will cover labor contracts, wouldn't it?
It does. Anything where one side has to do something and the other also has to do something. It also extends to the retirement benefits of people who have already stopped working for the city, which is what many bankruptcy lawyers thought would be the principal reason for jurisdictions to file Chapter 9s, not a labor dispute, as seems to be the principal reason here. Many people felt Contra Costa County might be the lead filer in this area because they carry their own retirement plans as well as their medical plans. So it's a huge problem that is being replayed throughout the United States entirely. They're going to be watching us as the bellwether in this area.
Okay, and as far as those contracts are concerned, you referenced them as far as the judge taking action on those contracts in Orange County. Is that really the only precedent or partial precedent that we can look at in that area?
No, it's not. The bankruptcy judges are federal court judges. They have the entire nation to look at. They can look at any case that arose in Puerto Rico, in Maine, in Alabama, in California, anywhere where there's been a Chapter 9 filing. But remember, the Orange County case never made it out of the trial departments. They ultimately resolved their differences by agreeing to have a new source of revenue, so there were never any appeals to the United States Court of Appeals in San Francisco, the Ninth Circuit. There are no controlling principles in this area. So what a judge in Los Angeles did with the County of Orange is not what the judge in Sacramento has to do with the city of Vallejo. They are both trial judges. They can look at the opinions that were written to see whether or not they want to follow them, whether they were good points, whether they're bad points, whether they're applicable, and then the trial judge can pretty well do what the trial judge wants to do, subject to whatever appeals might be taken and overruling. Or as one judge once said the first time he was reversed and sought solace from a more senior judge, found out you're not a real judge until you've been reversed at least once.